My mother-in-law often stayed overnight. My wife didn't mind. She liked having someone to talk to. But it annoyed me. I valued my personal space and felt uncomfortable when any member of our family invaded our space so often. It disrupted the order and control that I valued so much in my home. I am the head of the house, and I don't like outsiders walking around inappropriately. I brought it up with my wife, but she sided with her mother. No amount of persuasion worked, and I began to think of ways to keep my mother-in-law out of the house. One evening I noticed her heading for the bathroom. Seizing the moment, I got out of bed and stood in the hallway, my heart pounding with nervousness and determination. The anticipation made the silence even heavier. The door creaked open, and our eyes met with her astonished expression. For a brief moment, I wondered if this was the right plan, but I held my ground, trying to hide my unease with a nonchalant demeanor. I stood, pretending I needed to use the restroom as well. She froze when she saw me looking disheveled. I feigned surprise, mumbled an apology, and stated that I didn't expect anyone to stand up. Embarrassed, she hurried back to her room. I went back to bed, not knowing if my trick had worked. The next morning she was gone, and I was relieved. But it was short-lived. Later that day, the doorbell rang, and she was standing on the doorstep as if nothing had happened. Frustrated, I realized I needed a new approach. That evening, when everyone had gone to bed, I heard the creaking of floorboards. She came out of her room in a bold short nightgown. It was clear that she had dressed to provoke me. Surprised by her boldness, I gently took her hands and pulled her to me. To my surprise, she responded warmly by wrapping her arms around my neck. Her action was unexpected, and I was unaware of her true intentions. Was it a spontaneous reaction, or was she considering something? Meanwhile, I felt mixed feelings of guilt, curiosity, and excitement, not knowing how to interpret what had just happened. I hadn't expected this turn of events, but something stirred inside me. At first I wanted to scare her away, but instead, I found myself drawn into an unusual dynamic. We both realized the stakes were high. To avoid suspicion, I went back to my wife and made sure she was sound asleep. The next morning, my wife looked unusually alert and was preparing breakfast with a beaming smile. We exchanged knowing glances, but she paid no attention to the tension in the house. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself leading a bizarre double life. By day, I played the role of the attentive husband, making sure my wife didn't see anything out of the ordinary. At night, I struggled with the tension of forbidden encounters and the fear of being discovered. This constant balancing act drove me from elation to exhaustion as I tried to reconcile my actions with my conscience. My wife, always an early bird, rarely had the energy for intimacy. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law's nocturnal visits became more frequent. She was careful not to arouse suspicion, and I began to see her in a different light. Despite her age, she had a youthful confidence. As time went on, her presence began to annoy me less and intrigue me more. One evening, my wife surprised me by asking her mother to spend the night elsewhere. "Mom, no offense," she said, "I want to spend time alone with my husband tonight." My mother-in-law left reluctantly, picking up her bag and casting a subtle, knowing look at me. I brushed away the awkwardness, grateful for the temporary reprieve. When my wife asked if I was happy with her decision, I dodged the question, feigning indifference. She misinterpreted my reaction as satisfaction and thanked me for understanding. She didn't know that I had grown accustomed to my mother-in-law's company. Her absence that evening seemed strange to me. After all, my wife and I had agreed that her mother could stay with us sometimes, but not too often. This arrangement suited me just fine. My wife was unaware of the underlying dynamics, and I carefully maintained a balance between the two. Over time, my feelings became more complicated. Although I knew the risks, I couldn't deny the thrill. Life took an unexpected turn, and I learned to navigate its peculiar challenges.